Hello, sports fans. It is Tuesday, February the 26th, the year 2013, and as usual, a lot to get to in the sports world, so let's get it going right now. Before we get into our college basketball top 25, let's go through some scores of note from last night. Let's start in the college basketball, where Marquette at home beat Syracuse 74-71. Marquette has now won 24 straight games at home, second longest home winning streak in the nation. Only team that's won more home games in a row, believe it or not, is South Dakota State, who's won 30 in a row. The South Dakota State Jackrabbits have won 30 in a row at home. Hard to believe. But anyway, Marquette beat Syracuse last night. Marquette is a lunch pail type of team. They are gritty. They grind it out. There's three teams in the Big East that are like that. Marquette, Pitt, and Cincinnati. Not the most talented teams, but they will fight you tooth and nail. They are a lunch bucket type of team. They always bring their game. So nice win by Marquette last night. What's going on with Syracuse? Syracuse is going the other way. I thought they were a Final Four team. They look like they are going the other way fast. I mean, there's only 2 weeks left to the big dance. Syracuse got to pick up their game. They are not playing well. They're not peaking as the tournament's approaching, so I don't like what I see from Syracuse recently. They do have a little time to get their game back together, but I do not like what I see from Syracuse lately. Also last night, Kansas went on the road and beat Iowa State 108-96 in overtime. Very controversial call at the end of this game. Iowa State is up 2. As time is winding down, Kansas comes up the floor. It looks like Kansas is going to be called for a charge. The Kansas guy plowed over the Iowa State guy. There's a no call. The ball is loose on the floor. Iowa State gets called for a foul as, both of them are trying to scramble for the ball down there at the bottom of the pile. Very controversial call there. So Kansas ends up tying the game. They go to overtime, and Kansas ends up blowing them out in overtime. And Iowa State, the fans were going crazy about the no call. The coach was going crazy about the no call. It was a very controversial call. I thought it was a charge. I thought Iowa State got a bad call there. I thought the foul after that was very controversial. They're both scrambling for the ball on the floor. Very controversial. I thought Iowa State got the bad end of that. But let me say this. Just because the game goes into overtime on a bad call doesn't mean you need to get blown out in overtime. I mean, Iowa State needed to regroup there and play a better overtime game. They're still in their building, so they did a terrible job in overtime. And another thing, at the end of regulation, Iowa State missed a big free throw that could have put them up 3. So let's keep that in mind as well. So Kansas gets the road win. By the way, Iowa State had a 22-game home winning streak snapped last night with that loss to Kansas. Also last night, Villanova had a terrible loss to Seton Hall in New Jersey. Seton Hall beats Nova 66-65. Villanova could not afford to lose this game. Villanova was right there on the bubble. They'd won a few games in a row. They're starting to get themselves situated for the tournament. It looked like they were going to make it, and then you lose a game to Seton Hall. You can't lose to Seton Hall. Seton Hall's not a good team this year. Villanova needed to take care of business. This puts Villanova back on the outside looking in as far as I'm concerned. They are not in the tournament right now with this loss to Seton Hall. I think they were right there. If they would have won this game, I think they would have been right there to get in. Now I think they're on the outside looking in. So Villanova, very bad loss by them to Seton Hall. As far as your NBA last night, light night in the NBA, Denver at home beat the Lakers. No surprise. I mentioned this yesterday. First of all, Denver's a tremendous home team. Very hard to play in that altitude. And the Lakers coming off the back-to-back. They were in Dallas on Sunday, play in Denver on Monday. That's a bad recipe for basically an older team. I mean, the Lakers have an older team with the exception of Dwight Howard, Nash, Artest, Kobe. They're all old. So I knew Denver was going to win this game. So Denver plowed over the Lakers last night. Also last night, Boston in overtime beat Utah. Nice win by Boston. They had been really struggling on the road. Boston hadn't won a road game in like forever, so Boston did pull out a road win against Utah. Utah's battling for those last spots for the playoffs too, so that was a bad loss for Utah in their own building. As far as your NHL last night, Toronto went into Philadelphia and beat the Flyers. Ottawa beat Montreal at home in a shootout. Ottawa What is going on with them? All their top players are hurt, but yet all they keep doing is winning, and they win these close 1-0, 2-1 games. Their defense and goaltending has been outstanding this year. I don't know how long they're going to keep it up with all their top players out, but they are really hanging in there. They're showing me a lot. Ottawa. Chicago, again last night, wins at home over Edmonton in overtime. Chicago has not lost a game in regulation. We're about 20 games into the season. They haven't lost a game in regulation yet. Unbelievable job by the Blackhawks. And LA last night at home beat Anaheim. LA is starting to come around. LA had a cup hangover. They're starting to play good hockey now. We know they're good. We know they're real good. Look what they did last year in the playoffs when they just steamrolled over anyone. We know their goaltending is good. We know they have a solid team. When they get over this cup hangover, which appears they are right now, watch out for the LA Kings. Nice win over surprising Anaheim last night. Okay, so let's move over to our college basketball top 25. College basketball top 25 is out. We only got 2 more weeks in the regular season, then we head into our conference tournament. So college basketball is starting to wind down. Believe it or not, we're at the end of February. We're heading into March soon, and pretty soon the clocks go forward, and we're in springtime. Where is the time going? Pretty soon we're going to be in baseball season. I mean, that baseball World Classic is coming up in a couple weeks. Hard to believe where the time goes. But anyway, let's get to our top 25. I'm going to go from 25 to 1. Number 25, Louisiana Tech. 24-3, Louisiana Tech coming out of nowhere, and they are ranked 25 in college basketball. Louisiana Tech building a nice athletic program. They had a really nice year in college football and a nice year here in college basketball. Really nice job by their athletic department. Number 24, Oregon, they're 22-6. They need their guard back in the worst way. With him, they're a really good team. Without him, they're an okay team. They can't go far without him. Looks like he'll be back soon. Number 23, Pitt. They're 21-7. I mentioned them, before. They had a win over St. John's at the Garden on Sunday. They're a lunch pail type of team. They always bring their defense. A lot of times, though, Pitt goes through long stretches without scoring. That always seems to bite them in the tournament. Their defense is always solid. They always play hard. Their offense, though, always goes through long stretches without scoring. That always bites them in the tournament. Number 22, Marquette. Just mentioned them. They are 20-7. They're just like Pitt, lunch pail type of team, grinded out type of team. Not the most talented team, but here they are at 20-7. They just knocked off Syracuse. Number 21, Notre Dame, 22-6. I keep saying it. You look at this Notre Dame team, and you're like, this team isn't that good. I mean, yeah, they have a couple good players, but Mike Bray's a tremendous coach, gets the most out of his Notre Dame team every year. Number 20, Butler, they're 22-6. They've slipped a little bit in the last couple weeks. You have to love Butler, what they're doing. I mean, 22-6. I mean, just a tremendous job by Butler. 19, Memphis, they're 24-3. They're rolling again. Every year, Memphis seems to have a gigantic record. I mean, they are the cream of the crop in that Conference USA. Now, they're not as good as they were with Calipari. We know that. They're not going to get the same players, that Calipari got. They're still very good, though. They're 24-3, still rolling in Conference USA. Always at this time of the year, they seem to be on some 20-game winning streak. No different, this year. Number 18, St. Louis, 21-5. They are a really good team. They could be one of my surprise teams in the tournament. Although the way they're playing, they might not be a surprise come tournament time. They're already ranked 18th. I am so impressed with St. Louis, and I love their on-campus arena. Very intimate setting. The crowd is very into it, like what I see from St. Louis. Number 17, Wisconsin. They are 19-8. Nobody but does a better job at coaching than Bo Ryan. His teams, you don't want to play them. They play a style that is just... You just don't want to be involved in a Wisconsin game. They just make everything so ugly, and it just is not a game you want to be involved in. Their style is a handful for anyone to deal with. Okay, number 16, Ohio State. They are 20-7. They come off the big win against Michigan State over the weekend. They needed that win, Ohio State. They were in the top 5 early in the year. They've slipped way down. Needed that win over Michigan State. Haven't liked what I've seen overall from Ohio State this year. I thought they'd be a little better, but they did beat a good Michigan State team over the weekend. Number 15, Oklahoma State. They are 20-6. You got to like what you see from Oklahoma State this year. I didn't think they'd be this good. I mean, I did not think they'd be 20-6 at this point in the season. So nice job by Oklahoma State, and they play at historic Gallagher-Iber Arena. Number 14, New Mexico. They're 23-4. I've said it a billion times. I love their home court in Albuquerque. The pit in New Mexico is to die for. The fans are rowdy. They're loud. One of the best home courts in all of college basketball. Number 13, Kansas State, 22-5 with Bruce Weber. What a job Bruce Weber has done with this Kansas State team. Now, Kansas State eventually has to figure out how to beat Kansas. They can't beat Kansas, but they can beat just about everyone else. So they got to figure out how to beat Kansas. Number 12, Syracuse. They are 22-6. Starting to slip a little bit. Don't like what I see from Syracuse recently. Lost a couple games in a row here. Not playing well heading into the tournament. Number 11, Arizona. They're 23-4. Really nice home court, the McHale Center in Tucson. Another must-see arena. If you ever get out there, definitely check that out. Every time I watch Arizona, they're in a close game, and they win most of the close games that I've watched. Number 10, Louisville, 22-5. Rick Pitino's a great coach. They have a nice home court as well there in Louisville. Another must-see arena as well in Louisville. The fans are tremendous. Kentucky is a great basketball place. Not only do you have the Kentucky Wildcats, but you have Louisville. I mean, what a great basketball place Kentucky is. Number 9, Michigan State, 22-6. Tom Izzo, again, always seems to be around, always seems to be in the top 10. I'm telling you, you look up, they're going to be in the top 8 every year, no matter what Michigan State loses off their team. They seem to regroup, and they're always playing for big games. They're always in the hunt for the Final 8 and that Final 4. Number 8, Florida, 22-4. I really like Florida's team. Now, they've had a couple injuries recently. They got to get everyone back healthy. Florida is a dangerous, dangerous team. Number 7, Georgetown, 22-4. They are flying, Georgetown. Hottest team in the land. They are on fire, Georgetown. Went into Syracuse, knocked off Syracuse in front of 36,000 fans. Syracuse had a huge home winning streak. Georgetown plowed over them. Georgetown on fire. How good is Otto Porter? How good is he? Really good. Georgetown flying right now. Number 6, Kansas, 24-4. They beat Iowa State last night. Kansas is just a solid team. They're always a threat to go to the Final 4. I mean, every single year. Bill Self does a nice job with that team. Number 5, Miami, 22-4. Jim Larinaga, Coach of the Year. The Miami Hurricanes, number 5. They did lose to Wake Forest. I don't think that's a bad thing. I think they needed to take a loss and kind of regroup. They were stumbling a little bit before that. They pulled out some games real close that they didn't play well in. They finally get clipped by Wake Forest. Not the worst thing in the world. Regroup a little bit and come back strong. Number 4, Michigan, 23-4. They're starting to regroup after they had a couple of bad weeks of basketball. A lot of youth on Michigan. You wonder how far they can go. A lot of freshmen playing for Michigan. Number 3, Duke. They're 24-3. Need Kelly back. Looks like he will be back. You wonder how he's going to play when he gets back. With him playing at a high level, Duke's a Final 4 team. He's not playing at a high level. They're not. Number 2, Gonzaga. Number 2, Gonzaga, 27-2. What is going on here? Gonzaga, I think they're ranked 2 for the first time in their history. How could you say anything bad about Gonzaga? And one of their losses, they lost at the buzzer to Butler, a game they gave away with the turnover at the end. They could have won that game. So Gonzaga could only have one loss at this point in the season. How good of a program is Gonzaga? Spokane, Washington, a little school up there in Spokane, Washington. Here they are, 27-2, playing with the big boys year after year. They're not a mid-major anymore. They are a power every year now. Gonzaga, and they play at the Kennel up there in Spokane. The fans are great up there in Spokane, Washington. And number 1, Indiana, 24-3, one of the deepest teams in the country. Bloomington Assembly Hall is to die for. The fans are tremendous. And just like Kentucky, Indiana is basketball heaven. If you ever get out there, you have to experience Indiana basketball. You have to go out there to really experience how much these people love basketball. They love college basketball. They even love high school basketball out there. So Indiana right now, 24-3, and they are playing some good ball, and they are definitely one of your favorites to take the title this year. Okay, that's your top 25. A couple teams that dropped out of the top 25, Colorado State and Virginia Commonwealth. They're still going to be in the tournament. A couple bubble teams right now. Minnesota, watch out for Minnesota. Right now, they're solidly in the tournament, but they're 6-8 in the conference. They play Indiana. They could be 6-9 in the conference. Now, they still would probably be in, even with that bad conference record, because they have a great strength of schedule, good wins. But their last 3 games, home for Penn State, at Nebraska, at Purdue. Don't get sloppy against bad teams. You don't want to start dropping games to Penn State and Nebraska when you're 6-9 in the conference, and I'm giving them a loss to Indiana. I don't think they're going to beat Indiana, even though that game is in Minnesota. I think they're going to lose to Indiana, go to 6-9 in the conference. Still in the tournament with that record, but don't get sloppy against Penn State, Purdue, and Nebraska. Those are teams you got to beat. All right, here's some teams on the bubble. Here's some teams I think are on the bubble that are in right now. Cal, Baylor, Temple, and Ole Miss. They're on the bubble. I think those teams are in right now. Can't afford any slip-ups. Here's some teams that are close that I don't think are in right now. Kentucky, of course, they lost their big man. St. John's. St. John's really needs some quality wins. They're at Notre Dame and home for Marquette. Down the stretch, they got to pull out some wins here. Southern Miss, clearly on the bubble. And Villanova now. Villanova took a step back with that loss to Seton Hall. That was a bad loss by Villanova last night. Teams that I think are out now that need major help. Indiana State, Alabama, who had that awful loss to LSU over the weekend, Arkansas and Maryland. I would say those teams are out right now. They got to start doing some things, got to put together a long winning streak. Now remember, you win your conference tournament, you still get it to the big dance, but still that's very tough to do. And as far as teams I think are out now, and I think the only way they get in is if they win their conference tournament, Xavier, who is a perennial power, I think they're going to be out this year. They're usually always in the big dance. They always have a big run in the dance. Xavier with a down year this year. UMass, Charlotte, Central Florida, Stanford, Iowa, Santa Clara, and BYU, I think are out. I think they're heading to the NIT unless they win their conference tournament. So that's a little bit on your college basketball. We are getting down to the nitty-gritty in college basketball. We have 2 weeks to go, and then we're in our conference tournaments. Most teams have like 3-4 games left the most. Amazing how fast seasons go by in every sport now. It's unbelievable. We're heading towards March already. So that is your college basketball. Couple news and notes, a couple things I didn't get to over the weekend, things I didn't mention yesterday. Curtis Granderson out 10 weeks for the Yankees. He breaks his forearm, so that's a big loss for the Yankees. Remember, A-Rod is already out for the Yankees, plus Rivera and Jeter are coming off, injuries from last year. Yankees have a lot of question marks this year. We know they're going to be good, but the Yankees, it's World Series a bust every year. We know they're going to be good, but they have a lot of injuries, have some age. We'll keep an eye on the Yankees. As far as the Pistorius case, that's the South African runner, that whole mess in South Africa with the girlfriend and all that. Very, very horrible story. We don't know all the details yet. The next time he's going to be in court is June 4th. The trial's not going to be till a year from now. We don't know what's going to happen here in this case. Remember, he's a celebrity. She was a celebrity. To me, the story doesn't add up, but I don't know how this is going to turn out. But we'll keep an eye on that. But a very tragic story with the Pistorius case, the South African runner, with the whole girlfriend situation who was a model. Horrible, horrible story there. As far as some boxing goes, Floyd Mayweather signs with Showtime. He will fight Guerrero in May. Listen, I like Guerrero. He always brings his game. He always gives you an effort. I don't know if he can win this fight. Unless Mayweather really slows down and age starts, creep in. And remember, Mayweather's getting older now. He's getting older. How many fights does he have left in him? If Mayweather has anything left, he should beat Guerrero. But if Mayweather's starting to slow down, maybe Guerrero has a chance. Also, a fight that's not official that I'd like to see that they're talking about for May, Trout against Alvarez. Alvarez is a big prospect. Trout he just beat Cotto. The winner of that fight, if they do fight, would be a big star. Keep an eye on that to see if they make that fight. Also, I saw the making of Hagler Sugar Ray Leonard on ESPN Classic. If you ever get to check it out on ESPN Classic, the Hagler Sugar Ray Leonard fight, not only the fight, but everything that happened leading up to the fight, some really great stuff there. And that was a very close fight, very controversial decision, really good stuff. Back when boxing was at its peak, when Leonard and Hagler and Duran were around. I wish I had those days now. I'm just dying for a big fight. I miss big fights. I wish I had those guys around now. But anyway, if you ever get to check it out, Hagler Leonard on ESPN Classic, the making of the fight itself, tremendous stuff. Rousey, the female MMM fighter, she won over the weekend. I can't get into Rousey winning every fight in the first round. I mean, that's the problem I have with women's MMA. There's like one good fighter and she beats everyone in the first round. You need some depth in there. You need some quality matches. I can't get into her winning every fight in the first round. I mean, I just can't. I mean, it's very difficult for me to do, but she did win over the weekend. Also, as far as football, the 49ers are trying to trade Alex Smith. Looks like the Chiefs may be interested. Remember, Andy Reid is the coach of the Chiefs, so we'll keep an eye on that if Alex Smith goes over to Kansas City. I don't love Alex Smith. I mean, I think he's more of a backup than an elite quarterback, but, you know, the Chiefs need quarterback help. Castle was awful last year. Brady Quinn was even worse, so we'll keep an eye on that. And you know what? Enough of this NFL Combine. I cannot take any more news on the NFL Combine. Who cares how many push-ups a guy can do or how many bench presses a guy can do while he's running the 100-yard dash? I mean, does any of this stuff have to do with football? I mean, does anyone care? What does any of this stuff have to do with football? How many bench presses you can do? How fast you're running the 40? I mean, did this make a difference when Tom Brady was picked like 4,000th in the draft? I mean, come on, this combine has nothing to do with football. It's all nonsense. I can't believe the people that cover this. And this guy, squatted, 4,000 pounds. Who cares? What does that have to do with football? I mean, it's ridiculous stuff. And Manti Te'o from Notre Dame, his stock is going way down. I mean, forget the whole thing where he got duped with that whole scandal thing and all that. Where he thought he had a girlfriend and it turned out to be a guy and that whole ridiculousness. His stock has gone down. He played a terrible game against Alabama in the championship game. So I wonder where Manti Te'o gets drafted. So that's a little football stuff. One last thing on the Oscars. I wanted to mention this real quick. Daniel Day-Lewis, who won the Oscar for male leading role, that's his third Oscar, and he's the first male to win 3 Oscars in a lead role. Jack Nicholson has 3 Oscars, but one of them was supporting. So Daniel Day-Lewis, a lot of history. He's the first male to win 3 Oscars for the main character, for the lead role. That's very impressive. And he's only one behind the all-time record of Katharine Hepburn, who has 4. Daniel Day-Lewis, tremendous actor, can play any part. I mean, that's how you know you have a really good actor, when he can play multiple parts. So I wanted to mention that, Daniel Day-Lewis, with some history. I was too busy on my rant yesterday about the Oscars and how I hated the show to mention Lewis made some history yesterday. So that's some news and notes. As far as what to watch tonight for Tuesday night, as far as your NBA, Golden State at Indiana. Indiana is flying. Golden State has fallen way back. They have not been playing well at all. Milwaukee at Dallas. You want to keep an eye on that game because those 2 teams are fighting for the 8th spot in their respective conferences. Brooklyn at New Orleans. The reason I keep an eye on this game is Joe Johnson going to play. He's missed the last couple of games. The Nets lost both games. We know Williams is all banged up. Williams is going to be hurt the rest of the year. I mean, he's going to need off-season surgery. He's going to play through it this year, but he's not going to be 100%. So the Nets, a lot of injury woes. As far as your NHL, you have Winnipeg at the Rangers, you have Carolina at Washington, Pittsburgh at Florida, and Boston at the Islanders. As far as your college basketball tonight, this is the game I'm going to watch. Indiana at Minnesota. Number 1 Indiana at Minnesota. Minnesota, they win this game. They're definitely in the tournament. They lose this game, they could be in a dangerous spot, Minnesota, with 3 games left against bad teams. You don't want to slip up too bad, Minnesota. Right now they're in, but you don't want to slip up too bad. It should be a great environment in Minnesota. They play in an old barn out there in Minnesota. Fans are really passionate, playing an old barn, really classic setting. Should be a great Big Ten game tonight. Indiana at Minnesota, that's the game I'm watching tonight. Memphis at Xavier. At the beginning of the year, you said this is going to be a great game. Xavier hasn't had a good year, so it's kind of taken some luster out of this game. As far as Florida at Tennessee, it's a big rivalry game, but Tennessee's not that great. They are playing a little better. They're an NIT team, though. So that's some of the things to watch tonight. I would really focus on that Indiana-Minnesota game. That looks like a tremendous game in the Big Ten. Big Ten is loaded this year with good games. Indiana at Minnesota, must watch tonight in the old barn in Minnesota. All right, so we are all caught up with today. Tomorrow we're going to do our NHL. Thursday we'll do our NBA, and we'll cover everything else going on, scores, any news and notes that comes up. We'll do it all. You guys, enjoy the games tonight. Indiana at Minnesota particularly. Stay safe. Thanks for tuning in. I will talk to you tomorrow, Wednesday. Take care.